Details tonight on a twist in the search for a couple missing in the outback.
Jennie Kehlet went missing in the Goldfields near Sandstone. Her husband Raymond was found at the bottom of a 12-metre abandoned mine shaft, but Jennie had disappeared.
Any progress is good progress, and obviously the police have been busy with this in the background. Hopefully something comes of it.
At this point in time, we're not seeing anything that suggests criminality.
Are you serious?
Yes.
We've only got one side of the story.
We find Jennie, we will find out what happened.
It just doesn't happen out here. It's not normal behaviour.
Did you deliberately mislead the police about where you went with Ray and Jennie in Sandstone in March 2015?
No. It's not like them. They're experienced. They are not lost. Something terrible has happened.
Welcome to Some Kind of Closure, a podcast series focused on unsolved missing persons cases. Around 38,000 people are reported missing each year in Australia. Thankfully, most of these cases are resolved. In this series, however, we'll be focusing on the small percentage of cases that remain unsolved over several years. We'll explore the complexities and impact on the families involved, who at the end of the day are desperate for some answers and ultimately some kind of closure. Please be aware that this show deals with some distressing themes and may include content and language that some listeners will find distressing. In Season 1 of Some Kind of Closure, we'll be focusing on the perplexing case of missing campers Ray and Jennie Kehlet, who never returned from a prospecting trip they took to a remote region of Western Australia in March of 2015. A decade is a painfully long time to be living with the unknown, and it's my hope that this series will help shine a light on this case and open up conversations that will ultimately lead to some clarity and justice for Ray and Jennie's family. On Sunday, August 2nd, 2015, Graham Milne appeared in his one and only television interview with Alex Cullen on Channel 7's Sunday night program. It was 5 months after the fateful camping trip, and Graham was clearly emotional. These are Graham's words, but not his voice.
I just couldn't believe it. Just couldn't believe it. It was just something you don't want to hear. It's I still can't believe it. It's just sheer hell. It's just, I think about them every day. Just something that I hope never ever happens to anybody else. If anybody knows anything, please come forward and tell the police. It's gone on too long.
Graham never reached out to family members in the wake of the tragedy, nor did he attend Ray's funeral. After the television appearance, there was no public comment again from Graham regarding the camping trip until he was compelled to break his silence in the 2020 Coronial inquest. The beginning of Graham's testimony on Wednesday the 15th of January 2020 began with an unusual request. Glenn Cridland, the lawyer representing Graham, started the proceedings by stating that his client would be exercising his right to decline answering any questions on the basis they may have had a tendency to incriminate him. Cridland was convinced police were actively building a case against his client and felt that the inquest might be leveraged for this purpose. He also pointed out that his client had fully cooperated in earlier interviews as well as during home searches and DNA testing. He reasoned with the coroner that his client should not therefore be compelled to answer any questions, but if he was, he should be granted a Section 47 certificate. This essentially allows a coroner to compel a witness who would otherwise refuse to answer on grounds of self-incrimination to testify. In exchange, the witness receives a guarantee that their responses won't be used against them in any potential future criminal proceedings. Graham and his lawyer agreed to cooperate once this provision had been granted. It's important to note that while the Section 47 certificate meant the testimony shared during the inquest could not be used in a future criminal prosecution for the deaths of Ray and Jennie, it does stipulate that the testimony must be accurate and honest, with the very serious threat of considerable jail time if it wasn't. Lying under oath is a very serious offence, and under West Australian law, perjury can attract a jail sentence of 14 years. After the Section 47 certificate was granted, Brendan Nelson, counsel assisting the coroner Ros Fogliani, wasted no time establishing what would become a key theme in his line of questioning: Milne's trustworthiness. Mr. Nelson took Milne back to an interview that was conducted with police in November of 2015, just 7 months after the camping trip. In this interview, Milne had been presented with GPS data that placed him in a location he claimed he had not been on his way home, the shortcut road from the campsite. He had claimed he was not on that road and had in fact taken the long way home through Mount Magnet, explaining he went the longer route because his car had an intermittent engine issue, so he didn't want to risk breaking down on the dirt road. The issue was that the GPS data police obtained from his vehicle clearly placed him on the road he claimed he hadn't taken. When confronted with this data, Milne admitted he had lied to the police, but had an interesting explanation as to why he'd lied and why he was on that road. These are his words, but not his voice.
Mr. Milne, you should have Exhibit 5 in front of you and you should have tab 2 open. Is the first page a reference to a video record of interview that you participated in on 3rd November 2015 with Detective Sergeant Johnston and Detective Sergeant Constable Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Milne, I want to take you to a part of the interview and specifically refer you to it. Could I ask you to turn to page 274?
Yes.
And can I ask you to go about 2/3 of the way down the page, and in response to some questions, is there a statement from you, okay, I lied about the GPS?
Yes.
And following that, another statement, but it's actually a fact that I had gone off and I've gone up that road. I don't know, it was 5 or 6 clicks or whatever.
Yes.
And at that time, were you referring to the shortcut road or the Paynes Fine Sandstone Road?
Yes, from down that Paynes Find end.
And further down, you've made a statement. I'm a dickhead for trying to pull the wool over your eyes, so to speak. I came down from the Mount Magnet Road and I went back up that road. I was going to go back to camp and I don't know why. I don't know what I was thinking at the time why I done it. That's why I stopped. I stopped for about 15 odd minutes, turned around and came home. Have I accurately stated the answer that you've given on page 279?
Yes.
And again, when you've referred to went back up that road, are you referring to the Paynes Find Sandstone Road?
Correct.
And again, are you referring to going back up that road, essentially from the southern end?
Yes.
When questioned further, Milne stuck to his story that he took the long way home through Mount Magnet. But once he got to the town of Paynes Find, now no longer concerned about his car issues, decided not to head home, but rather back to camp to join Ray and Jennie on the prospecting trip. At this stage of the journey, he would have been driving for 3.5 hours when he changed his mind and decided to head back to camp, which with the shortcut would be an additional 2-hour drive north up the very dirt road he was previously worried about using. Added to this, Graham had indicated in earlier interviews that Ray and Jennie had planned on heading to Lake Miranda on the 22nd of March, so it seems strange that he'd be heading back to camp with them if they were planning on leaving that day. Graham says once he'd decided to head back to camp, he drove for about 15 minutes up the Paynes Find Sandstone Dirt Road, and then he says his conscience got the better of him as he had a work shift scheduled and he didn't want to let his team down, so he changed his mind again and deciding to stick with his original plan, turned around, headed south back down the dirt road and on towards home.
Mr. Milne, you've given evidence already as we were going through your statements and interviews at the commencement of your evidence, where I referred you to the interview with police where you admitted a lie in relation to travelling along the Paynes Find Sandstone Road on the morning of the 22nd. I want to be absolutely clear. Is your evidence still that you did not drive south on the Paynes-Fine Sandstone Road that morning, other than the part of the Paynes-Fine Sandstone Road that your GPS puts you on that road in the morning?
Yes, that was the only part. 5 kilometres from the Paynes-Fine road end.
And why were you on the Paynes-Fine Sandstone Road about 5 kilometres up the shortcut that morning?
Because I was actually going to go back to camping.
Why?
Well, I thought about it and I thought, well, may as well stick with them. And I've got part way up there, 5 clicks, stop, thought about it. I was actually supposed to go to work. Then I knew if I hadn't have gone in, the crew would have been short. So I turned around and headed home.
What do you mean by stick with them, Mr. Milne?
To go with Ray and Jennie.
But you were coming back to go on your work swing, weren't you?
I was going back to what?
You were coming back to Perth because you were due to return to work, weren't you?
To work, yes.
My understanding of your evidence or statements, Mr. Milne, was that you were intending to return to work, or you had to return to work, and that's why you were leaving that morning.
That's dead right, and I changed my mind. I was going to go back and I was going to ring them to tell them I wasn't coming in, and then I suppose the conscience got the better of me after I stopped and thought about it and then decided, no, I'll go back to work.
Mr. Milne, if that was your explanation, why didn't you provide that to police when they interviewed you in November 2015?
Because it made me out to be an idiot.
With respect, Mr. Milne, the police had made you out to be an idiot. Is that your answer?
No, it was myself that made myself an idiot. It was embarrassing.
Mr. Milne, do you have an explanation for why the GPS only started recording you at that point of being 5 kilometres up the Paynes-Fine Sandstone Road?
No, I don't know whether it turned on or just switched itself on. I've had a problem with that unit for quite some time. It just cuts in and out, overheats, drops out, cools down, comes back on. It was the last model that they made.
And to be clear, Mr. Milne, your evidence is that you only travelled up the Paynes-Fine Sandstone Road as far as the GPS situated you along that road.
Well, I don't know how far the GPS... I don't think there's anything recorded in the stuff to say how many kilometres it was or whatever.
Mr. Milne, would you agree that the text messages that you sent to Ms. Jones and that she was asked about when she gave her evidence were all received by her at 2:12 p.m. in the afternoon?
Yes, there was 4, I think.
Can you proffer any explanation for why those text messages didn't send when you were passing through either Mount Magnet or Sandstone?
No, I don't know, apart from it may have been the phone. I had nothing but problems with that phone. That's why I got the new phone when I got home. Well, after when I went to work, got the new phone then.
It's important at this stage to take a small detour to highlight 2 key interactions that happened shortly after the camping trip when Graham went back to work. The first incident relates to the phone Graham just mentioned. On January 14, 2020, during the Coronial inquest, one of Milne's former colleagues from the time, Michael Burfield, was called to the stand. While we don't have a transcript of his testimony, Ray's brother, Dave Kehlet, who attended the entire inquest, took detailed handwritten notes throughout. Dave recalls one key moment in Michael's testimony that stood out involving Milne's phone. Michael explained that on the second day of his first shift back after the camping trip, Graham asked him for help with a very specific task. He wanted to completely wipe and reset his phone. Michael also noted that Graham seemed very tired and mentioned he'd had a sleepless night. He was aware that Graham had been away camping with the Kehlets, and during their conversation, Graham mentioned he was somewhat concerned as he hadn't heard from Ray and Jennie since leaving them, despite trying to call and message them. It's important to note that this conversation happened before any official alarm had been raised about the Kehlets being missing. When asked why he wanted to wipe the phone, Milne told Michael he was planning on giving it to a family member. Another moment that stood out during the inquest was when Graham was questioned about a conversation he'd had with a work colleague named Greg Cheeseman. Greg had been prospecting with Graham in the past, and like other witnesses, had also seen Graham rope into mine shafts. In a conversation with Greg after the camping trip, Graham mentioned he had bumped into the Kehlets in Woburn. This story was highlighted during the inquest.
Mr. Milne, I referred you to a witness statement from Mr. Cheeseman yesterday. Can you just remind me what your relationship is with Mr. Cheeseman?
Just a friend.
Did you speak to Mr. Cheeseman about your trip with the Kehlets?
Possibly.
Do you have any recollection of speaking with him once you returned from your trip?
I would have spoke to him after the trip, yes.
Can the witness please be shown Exhibit 2, Tab 9A, paragraph 34? Mr. Milne, if we could take the opportunity to read paragraphs 33 through to 35.
Yes, I think where he's referring to the bumping into him was when I met them at Woburn.
Why would he have thought you bumped into them in Woburn when that was your prearranged point of meeting?
I don't know, in fact. I don't even think he knew it was a prearranged meeting spot.
Why would you have told him that you bumped into them in Woburn?
No, I probably would have said I met them. I don't know.
It's reasonable, isn't it, that Mr. Cheeseman's account could only have come from you?
Well, I don't know who said that.
Would you refute that you said those things to Mr. Cheeseman?
Would I? I don't think I would say realise how small the world is, and I wouldn't have been surprised if I said bump into them, because I knew I was going to meet them there.
It's unclear why Graham claimed he just bumped into Ray and Jennie, when in reality it was a trip they'd spend months planning and training for together. This story, like many Graham shared during the inquest, only raised more questions, especially as he has pressed further on the details of his journey home. According to Milne, after his marathon 18-hour solo prospecting session, he returned to the camp around 2 to 3 in the morning, packed up and left for the long drive home without saying goodbye to the Kehlets at about 3 or 4 a.m. GPS data shows Milne arrived back home south of Perth in Medina at 8:17 p.m, a 16-hour journey for what usually is a 7 to 9 hour drive, depending on the route taken. Milne claims he drove out of the campsite, back to the Paynesfine Sandstone Road, turned right, drove north 30 kilometres to the town of Sandstone, turned left heading east driving 150 kilometres to Mount Magnet, turning left and heading 143 kilometres south to Paynesfine, and then continuing another 460 kilometres home to Medina. At this stage, it'd be beneficial to explain the two possible routes back to Perth from the campsite. The campsite itself is located just a few kilometres off an unsealed, well-maintained dirt road called the Paynesfine Sandstone Road. That dirt road essentially is a shortcut between the towns of Paynesfine and Sandstone, and is the typical route one would usually take to and from the campsite at Bell Chambers, as it's much quicker and more direct than heading back to the National Highway via Mount Magnet. To compare, to get from Graham's suburb of Medina to the campsite via the shortcut road is 671 kilometres and can be completed without stopping in 7 hours. The other route via Mount Magnet is a 784 kilometre drive and takes about 8 hours and 40 minutes to complete. Essentially, 1.5 hours can be saved taking the shortcut road. During the inquest, Milne was emphatic that he took the longer route home via Mount Magnet as he was worried about his vehicle potentially breaking down and didn't want to risk driving on the dirt road, even though it would have saved him a lot of time. Mr. Nelson and Miss Keary spent considerable time during the inquest pressing Graham to confirm that he took the Mount Magnet route home, a claim he stuck to, despite evidence suggesting otherwise. One key detail that cast serious doubt on his story was the absence of any CCTV footage showing his vehicle passing through the town. The main intersection in Mount Magnet had a service station at the time with a camera that captured all Perth-bound traffic, yet Graham's car was never recorded passing through the town that day.
Are you able to explain, Mr. Milne, why police have been unable to observe you on CCTV footage taken from the BP service station for that morning?
I can't explain that at all. No, I can't.
One way that Milne and his lawyer attempted to make sense of this fact was the theory that he could have potentially driven behind the service station and bypassed the stop sign on the corner, and therefore also the security camera. Coroner Rosfogliani noted this explanation in her findings under point 149, saying, "There is a stop sign on the Sandstone Road approach to the intersection at the BP service station, and Mr. Milne does not recall whether he went past that stop sign. Through his lawyer, he posits that he may well have driven on the dirt thoroughfare around the back of the BP service station, thereby avoiding the stop sign. It is noteworthy that Mr. Milne has no direct or specific recall of actually going around the back of the BP service station. While I was travelling through the region, I decided to look at this intersection for myself to get a clearer understanding. Although the service station is no longer there, the layout is still very clear."
Just heading home now, and I'm coming into Mount Magnet. And this is the way Graham Milne said he came home from the camping trip. Now, back then, the main left where you turn was a service station, and that was the only CCTV camera in town at the time. Graham Milne was never detected on that camera. Now, he said he had taken potentially a back way around, which apparently, according to some locals I spoke to yesterday, there was potentially a way to go this way. Now, why you would go up there, I'm not even that game to do it, and work your way around, I'm not sure. Especially with a trailer, you can see it's quite a rough way to go. I'm not going to go that way to potentially avoid that stop sign there, which makes zero sense. It's not like it was even a traffic light. That might be more plausible. And anyone whose turns here would have been picked up on that footage, but he never was. He claimed he went right around the back there, over that big bumpy section, and would have had to jump the curb here back onto the road. It defies all logic and just doesn't make sense.
Another detail that challenges Graham Milne's claim about his route home is the behaviour of his mobile phone. Despite allegedly passing through the towns of Sandstone and Mount Magnet, his phone didn't send any messages until 2:12 p.m, when it finally connected to a tower near Woburn, about 300 kilometres south of Mount Magnet. At that point, 4 pre-written messages to his partner were sent. Messages that, according to Dave Kellett's notes from the inquest, related to Graham leaving the campsite and saying he was heading home. This raises a clear question. Why didn't those messages send earlier, when he supposedly passed through the 2 towns with mobile reception? It was a question very much on the mind of Brendan Nelson during the inquest.
Mr. Milne, in the light of the absence of CCTV, the fact that you didn't stop for LPG at Mount Magnet, the GPS locations that you don't dispute, and the fact of the messages being sent at a particular time in the afternoon, would you agree it appears implausible that you travelled via Mount Magnet?
That I went via
Mount Magnet, in light of all those matters?
Yes.
Do you agree it seems implausible or defies logic that you travelled through Mount Magnet that morning?
I went through Mount Magnet.
Mr. Milne, if it's accepted that you went through Mount Magnet and that you didn't take the Paynes-Fine Sandstone Road, would you agree that if the GPS coordinates and the GPS records are right, there is likely still 5 hours unaccounted for?
Well, I've gone through my timings for my counsel, and there doesn't appear to be much difference in the timings than it should be.
The timeline of Milne's drive home has always been a point of confusion for many, including Milne, who struggled to make sense of it with his partner in the early days of the investigation. I chatted with Milne's partner's son, Rob, who shared some texts from that time with me. Milne's own family was clearly having trouble understanding how a trip that usually takes under 9 hours had taken Graham 16. This is Rob reading one of the messages from his mum regarding the timeline.
So me being me, decided to do a shitload more brainstorming with Graham, surprised he's still talking to me. Anyway, the 5 hours that is missing from his timeline, I think I found it. And it was between Graham leaving the camp and fueling up. The cops and Graham didn't know the time and it didn't show on the statement, so I called the bank and got the time. And now the timeline GPS data fit, all about half an hour. Graham's got to go to the cop show tomorrow to have fingerprints taken. They found fingerprints in Ray's car, hence the reason for my immediate panic. And decided to go through and everything with Graham again. We had that one joyous moment when he bought fuel. I hope to any fucking God that it makes a difference.
In this text, it's apparent that Graham and his partner Michelle were very concerned about firming up their story around Graham's timeline. It's not clear from this text how they justified all the details, but it is clear they were very concerned. One justification for the length of time taken that was discussed in the Coronial inquiry was a long nap that was purportedly taken just south of Payne's Find. Milne describes this nap during the inquiry.
Mr. Milne, once you have reached Payne's Find, what have you done from that point?
What have I...
Once you have reached Payne's Find, you say that you've gone up the Payne's Find road.
Yes.
Turned around.
Yes.
The GPS has begun recording you. What did you do after Payne's Find? Did you have a rest at any point?
Yes, I had a sleep.
Where did you have a sleep?
Can't tell you exactly where it was, but it was a good, nice, wide open rest area, and that was on the right-hand side of the road going to Woburn.
And would you accept that the GPS would tend to indicate that you took a period of about an hour and a half where you didn't appear to move? And that would have been the rest that you were taking between Payne's Find and Woburn?
Well, I believe, according to the police report, it was 2 hours, 17 minutes.
Accepting that it's 2 hours and 17 minutes, would you accept by about that time you had had that amount of sleep in about 40 hours?
Yes.
You accept that?
Yes.
You believe that's reasonable?
Done it before.
Do you believe that's safe to drive after having 2 hours of sleep within 40 hours?
I will agree with you. No, it's not safe.
And you're a medic, aren't you, Mr. Milne?
Sorry?
You're a medic, aren't you? That's your job.
Yes.
There were a handful of notable GPS coordinates discussed during the Coronial inquiry in relation to Graham's journey home. The first notable GPS ping is the one that exposed the lie we mentioned at the start of this episode. This one occurred at 10:17 a.m. on the dirt road leading back to the campsite, down near the Payne's Find end. A few minutes later, another ping shows Milne heading south on the Great Northern Highway. Then we have 3 more GPS pings just south of Payne's Find, all at roadside truck stops. On my own drive home from Sandstone, I stopped at each of these locations to take a closer look. While I was out there, I spoke with a few locals, and what I discovered added new layers to the story I hadn't come across before.
Okay, so just leaving the Payne's Find Roadhouse, and I'm just gonna, on the way home, stop at all the known locations that Graham stopped at on the way home. So I just had a chat with Doug, who he owns the Roadhouse there, and it's just good to get local perspectives, obviously, on the story. And a couple of things really jumped out after speaking to Carol last night. It was the first I'd heard that the bedding was missing from the campsite, from Ray and Jennie's rooftop tent. And that's obviously significant because that's a very strange thing to be missing. And chatting to Doug today, he said that a friend of his around that time, not too far from the campsite, found some bedding with a bullet hole in it and blood on it. And that happened to be also not very far from where that outhouse structure that was over 100 years old had suddenly been burnt down as well around that time. So a couple of strange coincidences there.
This is Doug explaining this strange occurrence in his own words.
About a month or 2 months before they went missing, and probably late February we were out that way prospecting. It's the first time we found that old building and camp, and that's been out there for 100 odd years. And then we went back out there in probably August of the same year. They went missing in March, and it's all been burnt down. So it was weird.
Missing persons expert Rick also had taken an interest in this burnt down structure during his own search in the region.
Unexplained, it wasn't inhabited, so that to me is a coincidence, potentially in the same time frame that you have 2 people going missing, later to be found, one of them murdered, the other one still remains missing. That should, you would think.
And that fire was just in that one spot, right?
It was only the house, yeah. It wasn't a bushfire or anything like that. It was. I went there and had a look, and I'm not an arson detective or whoever they're called, but should it be looked at? To me, it's if it's in the search area and it suits the time frame, it should be.
Not long after Ray's body was found, another unusual and concerning discovery was made by a local road grader. Doug goes on to explain.
There was a grader driver out at UME, Brad Hodder. He found a blanket on the road with a bullet hole in it and blood in it, and the police from Mount Magnet come down and got it, but nothing was done about that.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was a few, either in between or just after that was a reported missing, that after the body was found.
Yeah, because speaking to Carol last night, and I hadn't heard this before, when they went out to the campsite, the bedding was missing.
This person went out with the cops the first day. The dog came in on the Monday, the cops came out with this person the next day. But this person swears there was no bedding in that tent.
Yeah, right, that's a grey blanket. I mean, I could ring Brad Otter now and ask him exactly what
Yeah, could you?
Yeah. Remember that blanket you found out there where that lady went missing out at you and me there?
The what?
The blanket you found on the road with blood on it.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to that? The Yogo Magnet cops come and got it, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they say anything to you, or they just come and picked it up?
Yeah, they picked it up and took it back in, and never heard anything from it.
Because how far out in the Lake Barley Road was that? A couple of k's?
I think that was the other side, that Penny West.
Yeah, righto. So that's where that old goat farm is down there. That was burnt down that same year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Righto. You don't know. They didn't give any names of who was working. What the coppers' names and that were, did they or not?
No, they just sort of come out there, just sort of looked at it, and then just brought them back to town.
Yeah, right.
Never heard any more of it.
Yeah, because we never heard nothing about that. Because All Track apparently found a magazine a gun magazine in that little turkey's nest on that road too, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, no worries. All right, I'll let you get back to grading your roads and I'll catch up with you shortly.
Yeah. No worries, mate.
All right, take it easy, eh? Cheers.
Yeah, same here.
Right, see ya. Yeah, so they definitely...
So is that near where that shack that burned down was?
Yeah. So that shack's about 15 k's past Penny West, and that, I thought it was close to you and me, but it's the other side of Penny West, so it's not far from that shack.
After my chat with Doug, I continued south of Payne's Find and stopped at the 1047 GPS ping, just 20 kilometres away. My head was swimming with the information I'd just received from Doug, so I decided to call Dave and have a chat with him about it.
G'day, David. How are you going?
yourself?
Good. I just thought I'd give you a quick update, and I just had a couple questions because, I just finished the interview at Payne's Find with Doug. He said he had a mate called Brad who around that time found a blanket with a bullet hole and blood on it.
Yes.
So you'd heard of that?
Yeah, I think Rick mentioned that.
He called the guy when we were chatting, but he said he handed it. The Mount Magnet police got it. He said.
Mount Magnet, yeah.
And so nothing was done with it. Is that? So you've followed that up?
Not that we're not. Yeah, we've followed it up. Don't know if anything's been done about it or not. That's the thing. All we know is, I can't remember who said that it had gone missing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and the other thing I guess that tied in, and again, sorry if you'd already knew this, but he said, because when he was talking about where it was found, he said, oh, that's right near that, not far from that hut that was burnt down as well.
Yeah.
Which Rick had mentioned as well, which was the first I'd heard of that. So it was just a couple of different threads crossing that I wasn't aware of before, that I just wondered if it sounds like you're already across it.
Well, not across it, but like that's the thing. So if you go back to the start, so the person that went out there with the cops, and he mentioned that to us as well, and he said it in the inquest that he looked in the rooftop tent and there was no bedding in there. There was obviously pillows and pillowcases because they got tested, but there was no other bedding in there. And then Rick had chatted to Doug about that same scenario before, and Rick went and looked at that house and like I think he said the other day, he's no arson expert, so everything gets told to the cops. Whether they do anything about it or not, don't know. What I might do is send a message to our cold case group and just say, look, a couple of things have come up from the weekend, and just I know we've probably mentioned it before, but just to make sure.
I think it's worth it. I mean, because to me, if that blanket has never been tested, that's massive. Yeah, a lot more questions than answers, unfortunately.
Milne claims to have left camp at 3 to 4 a.m. However, the first documented GPS ping near Payne's Find at the south end of the dirt road was at 10:17 a.m. A 6.5 hour window of time in what is only a 3.5 hour drive. Furthermore, when we look at the hard data of the first ping at 10:17 a.m. in Payne's Find, next to the final ping at 8:17 at Milne's home in Medina, we see a 10-hour time frame in a drive that should only take 5 hours. Even with the 2-hour nap, we still have several hours unaccounted for on this leg of the journey.
All right, so I've just pulled off Great Northern Highway, heading south of Payne's Find, and this is another GPS stop where Graham spent a couple of hours. He said this is where he slept, and it's actually really not far from that other GPS ping where he stopped. That was only about 18 minutes prior to this one. So not sure why you'd stop at one rest stop there and not nap, and then come to another one 18 minutes later and then nap for a couple of hours, but I guess we'll go for a little walk and have a look out there. Actually a really beautiful range, just mini range up across the road there. Like it's been said time and again, but even just these quick 5-minute walks out here are really quite taxing when it's mid 30 degrees. So to think of being out in this literally all day, walking around, prospecting with a heavy pack on, it's near impossible, I would say, without killing yourself. So It is a very unforgiving country. Anywho, this is where Milne was for 2 hours on his way home. And yeah, the explanation is he was very tired and had a sleep here, which would make sense. You would be tired after 18 hours of prospecting and then all that driving. Just leaving the roadside GPS ping where Graham spent 2 hours, so he's had a sleep. He's got back in his car and only 3 minutes later, and I'll stop when we get there, 3 minutes later he stopped again 3 kilometers down the road. And that just seems weird. He's had a sleep, maybe he's woken up fresh and he's thought of something else as he's got down the road here, only a couple of Ks, so we'll stop where he stopped. And there seems to be, based on the map, that there's another like gravel pit area here, so I don't know if there's anything to this, but it just seems odd. Is he getting rid of stuff on the way back? I don't know why you'd be stopping. There's 3 stops south of Payne's Find in fairly quick succession, really. I mean, minus the 2 hours for sleeping, obviously. So yeah, we'll be there in 1 minute. So we've only just left the other spot. We've woken up, we've got back on the road again. We've gone 3 or so kilometers and then we've stopped again. I'd have to double check, but I don't think he stopped very long at this spot. But I have to double check that one. And we're coming up to it now. Flip the camera. Oh, this is it. So he's seen another gravel pit, which is not an easy or natural place to pull over. Why you would pull from that other side of the road when you're heading south and pull onto the opposite side of the road here. He's obviously spotted this gravel pit at the last second, and I don't want to drive too far into this. And he stopped here, which is very strange now, having seen the road. That comes up very quickly, and he's obviously made a snap decision, like you saw me do, to rip off the road and pull in here. Like, that is really weird. Why would you spend 2 hours sleeping at that road stop back there, wake up, 3 minutes later rip into this spot? Really weird. I mean, the chances of finding something are next to zero, but you know for a fact he stopped here. And the only reason I would think you would do that so quickly after you've had a 2 hour sleep is you've thought of something. You're a bit fresh when you've woken up. You've gone, oh crap, I need to get rid of that as well. And you've seen this little pull in with the gravel pit. And maybe chuck something out here. I mean, there's so much crap everywhere. It's a glove there. There's so much random stuff out here, like, you know, fabric, clothing.
So why did a trip that should have taken 7 to 9 hours end up taking 16? In conversations with Dave Kehlet, a common theory among family members is that this extended journey may have involved detours to dispose of items connected to the trip, including potentially abseiling equipment and prospecting gear that remains unaccounted for. Some also believe it's possible that during this time, the final resting places of Ray and Jennie were determined. While these are unproven theories, they do raise questions that remain unanswered and may help explain the unusually long duration of the drive home. And that brings us to one of the most intriguing accounts in this case, a chance encounter on the side of a dirt road in the middle of the outback that adds even more weight to these suspicions. What longtime prospectors Mark and Gina Granville witnessed that morning has stayed with them ever since, and it's raised serious questions about what might have actually been happening during that long window of time. Mark and his wife Georgina are no strangers to the Sandstone region. At the time of the Coronial inquest in 2020, Mark explained that for the previous 5 years, he'd been spending about 180 to 200 days a year in the region, prospecting through both summer and winter. Mark Granville isn't just an experienced prospector. He also served as a volunteer firefighter for 14 years, including as a lieutenant overseeing teams in the field. In that role, he became accustomed to navigating remote terrain, managing vehicles, and crucially, training himself to notice and remember faces, vehicles, and movements in the bush. As he told the coroner, that attention to detail once helped secure the conviction of an arsonist. That level of experience makes him more than qualified to speak to the conditions, landscapes, and roads in the Sandstone region. In the pre-dawn hours of March 22, 2015, Mark and Georgina were driving south on the Paynesfine Sandstone Road when they came across a vehicle with a trailer pulled over on the left side of the road facing south. As they slowed down to check if everything was okay, they were taken aback by the erratic behaviour of a man who'd been squatting down beside the trailer. He rushed toward their vehicle, waving them off aggressively and yelling at them in a threatening manner. In all their years travelling through the outback, the Granvilles had never seen anything like it, and the distinct image of that man has stayed with them ever since. That distressing incident occurred not far from where Ray Kehlet's body would later be discovered. What makes this testimony so important is that Mark and Georgina are the only independent eyewitnesses to encounter someone in that area during that critical time. Having driven this road myself, traffic is not frequent. The Granvilles certainly weren't expecting to see anyone that morning, and the man they encountered clearly wasn't expecting to be seen either. His shock and aggression suggest he was not just surprised, but completely caught off guard. Mark's testimony provided some of the most compelling evidence of the 2020 Coronial inquest. These are his words, but not his voice.
And your statement relates to an encounter that you had. Can you just explain to me exactly what it was that you first observed?
Okay, well, my first observation was driving down the road. I got a reasonably good eyesight for long distance. There was an unusual lights in the distance, which straight away I recognised as a vehicle, because they're an unusual size, which was unusual, but as I came closer, I turned the high beam off. Then the closer I got, I could see there was a vehicle on the side of the road with a camper trailer. As I approached it, it was obvious that the person hadn't quite spotted me yet, because they didn't respond until I was in closer, so I'd spotted them before they spotted me. He was looking at the left-hand side toolbox of the camper trailer out the front, bending down, looking at it, not really doing much, just looking at this particular box, which I had no idea what that was at the time, and I still have no idea now, but he was concentrating on that. And as I got closer, he noticed that I was there and he got up. He stood upright, walked towards the back of the camper trailer, and as we were slowing down, probably to around 5 k's an hour, we approached the person was being completely erratic in all ways as far as his attitude. He was like, fuck off, which was totally out of character of anyone that's ever been down a lonely track at any time in your life. It's not something that is, it's not normal behaviour at all, ever. I've never seen it before, and I've never seen it again. So
And how would you describe the person that you saw?
Besides being an arsehole?
What physical features did you observe?
Well, very similar to the person in the room today.
At this stage of the proceedings, Mark Granville pointed directly at Graham Milne, and the tone of the room shifted dramatically, with audible shouts from family members. Coroner Ros Fogliani quickly regained control, asking Mark not to point at anyone in the room, but instead to describe his own independent recollection of the person he'd seen that day. But it was too late. It was abundantly clear to all who Mark believed he'd seen on the dirt road that day. But why was this person so shocked and angry? Why would they yell and threaten a passerby who is simply stopping to help? These are just some of the many questions Dave Kehlet was asking himself as he continued to take notes throughout the inquest. But nothing was adding up. Nothing made sense. This was a sentiment Graham Milne himself also acknowledged in his response to Alex Cullen on Channel 7's Sunday night program.
Can you begin to explain what's happened here? What do you think?
I don't know. I've run through all sorts of different scenarios, possibilities, and nothing makes sense. Just nothing makes sense at all.
In future episodes of Some Kind of Closure, we'll continue to explore the key details of Ray and Jennie's final trip, speaking with family members, experts, and others closely connected to the case. If you or anyone you know has information about this case, you can contact us via our Facebook page, The Man in the Hole. As the series unfolds, we're hopeful that more people will come forward with insights that could help piece together a clearer picture and ultimately bring the families some kind of closure and hopefully justice. It's also important to note that a $2 million reward is currently being offered for information leading to a conviction in this case. This is one of the largest rewards in Australian history, offering a powerful incentive for anyone with knowledge to come forward. If you have any information related to this case, please contact Crime Stoppers on 1800 333 000. Even the smallest details could make a huge difference. That number again, 1800 333 000. We acknowledge the Badimaya people of the Yamaji Nation as the traditional custodians of the lands where this episode was recorded. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise their enduring connection to this unique and beautiful place. Thank you for listening to Some Kind of Closure. If you found this episode valuable, please consider subscribing and leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's a quick, free way to support the show, and it really helps us reach more people. This is a fully independent production. If you'd like to support the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Just get in touch via our Facebook page. Lastly, we acknowledge the presumption of innocence for all individuals discussed in this series. Any opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the producers. Thanks again for listening.
We've only got one side of the story.
They were just everyday people.
We find Jenny, we will find out what happened.
And the truth will prevail.